Okay, so we're going to take a deep dive into these LLMs.
Mm.
You sent over a bunch of research.
Yeah.
And I got to say, it's a little intimidating.
Yeah.
But I think we can get our 12-year-old brains around this.
Okay.
So LLM.
Yeah.
Multimodal large language model.
Yes.
What does that even mean?
So think about it this way.
Okay.
Imagine you've got a computer that can not only read and write,
Okay.
but it can also see pictures, videos, music.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's got all of its senses working.
Okay.
That's what an MLLM is.
Okay.
It can take in and process all sorts of information, just like we do with humans.
Okay, so I'm kind of getting it, but how does it actually work?
So imagine...
Like, what's going on inside?
Yeah.
Okay.
Imagine you're building a robot, right? And to make it the best, you would give it different tools.
Yeah, like tools to see,
exactly,
to hear, to understand things.
Exactly. So those are what we call modality encoders. And they're like the robot's eyes and ears and nose. And they take in all the different types of information, whether it's a picture, a video, a sound, and they turn that information into something that the robot's brain can understand.
So like they turn pictures into code or something?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
And then there's this thing called the input projector, which you can think of as like a universal translator. And it makes sure that all that information from those different senses is organized in the same way.
Okay.
So the brain doesn't get confused.
Got it.
Yeah.
So you've got the senses gathering the information.
Yep.
The encoder turns it into code. The projector organizes it.
Exactly. Then it goes to the LLM backbone.
Okay.
The main brain. And this is where a large language model, like the ones you might have heard of, like ChatGPT, comes in. It takes all that organized information and starts making sense of it.
So it's like the LLM is the one that actually learns from all this stuff.
Exactly.
Okay.
And just like you learn in school, these models need training.
Yeah.
So first, there's pre-training. You can think of it like giving the robot a giant textbook filled with images, videos, and text.
Okay.
It absorbs all of this to build up its knowledge.
So pre-training is like loading the robot's brain with a ton of information.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then after pre-training, there's instruction tuning.
Okay.
And now this is where the robot learns how to follow instructions.
Okay.
Like, write me a poem about a cat.
Right.
Or show me a picture of a dog playing fetch. It's learning to understand what we want it to do.
So the pre-training is like learning the basics.
Right.
And then the instruction tuning is like learning how to actually use that knowledge.
Exactly.
Like learning all the cool things this robot can do.
Exactly.
But can't these LLMs already do things like write poems?
That's a great question.
Like, what makes the LLMs different?
So LLMs, like ChatGPT, are really good with text.
Okay.
But they can't handle other types of information as well. So, like, imagine trying to describe a picture to ChatGPT.
Right.
It wouldn't really understand.
Right.
MLMs, on the other hand, can take in all sorts of information, and they can connect the dots and use that to do way more complex things.
So it's not just about understanding lots of different types of information.
Right.
It's about putting it all together.
Exactly.
To do more complicated tasks.
Exactly.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah.
So if this MLLM is like a super-powered robot, what can it actually do?
Yeah.
What kind of output does it produce?
So that's where the output projector and the modality generator come in. So the output projector is kind of like translating the robot brain's thoughts back into instructions that the generator can understand.
Okay.
And the generator is like the artist of the team. So if the robot needs to create a new image, video, or even music, the generator makes it happen.
So it's like a whole team of specialists working together.
Exactly.
You got the senses, the translator, the brain, the artist, all in this one
all-in-one package.
Super smart AI package.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to make things even more interesting, we're not just talking about one type of LLM here.
Right.
There's a whole bunch of them.
Okay.
Each with their own strengths and quirks.
Okay.
It's like having a whole team of robots, each with their own set of skills.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is where it gets interesting. Tell me about these different LLMs.
Okay.
What makes them special?
So some of the top players are BLI-P2, LLaVA, and Mini-GPT-4. Like you can think of them as the star athletes of the LLM world.
Give me the rundown on their skills.
So let's start with BLI-P2. This one's really good at connecting what it sees with what it reads. So like if you show it a picture of a cat sitting on a mat, it can not only tell you what's in the picture, but it can also answer questions like, what color is the cat?
Okay.
Or what is the cat doing?
So it's like the super observant one.
Exactly.
Doesn't miss any details.
No, Alabia is a bit more on the artistic side.
Okay.
It's amazing at understanding images
Mm-hmm.
and then explaining them in a really detailed, almost poetic way.
Wow, so like a robot art critic.
Exactly.
Okay, what about Mini GPT-4?
Mini GPT-4 is the storyteller.
Okay.
It can take a series of pictures and weave them together into a story complete with characters, dialogue, and a plot.
It's like having a robot friend who can turn your photo album into a novel.
Exactly.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So BLIP2 is the observant one.
Mm-hmm.
Elevate is the artist.
Yes.
Mini GPT-4 is the storyteller.
Mm-hmm.
I'm starting to see how each of these models brings something different to the table.
And researchers are always working on making these models even better. Okay.
Like by giving them even more information to learn from or finding new ways to train them.
So what's next for these AI superstars?
Well,
Are they just going to keep getting smarter and more creative?
That's the exciting part.
Yeah.
There's so much potential for where MMLLMs can go.
Okay.
Imagine a world where these models can help us with even more complex tasks, like designing new products, creating personalized educational experiences, or even developing new medical treatments.
That's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
It sounds like they could revolutionize a bunch of different fields.
They absolutely could.
Wow.
And one area that I find particularly fascinating is this concept of any-to-any modality conversion.
Okay, now you're really blowing my mind.
Yeah.
Any-to-any conversion.
Yeah.
What does that even look like?
So imagine you have a piece of music that you love,
Okay.
and any-to-any MMLLM could potentially take that music.
And turn it into a painting that visually represents the emotions and melodies of the song. Or you could take a poem and have it transformed into a 3D animation.
Wow.
Bringing the words to life in a whole new way.
That's next level creativity.
Yeah, the possibilities are literally endless.
Are there any MMLLMs that can actually do that right now?
Some models are getting close.
Okay.
GPT-4, for example, has shown some incredible capabilities in understanding and generating content across multiple modalities.
Okay.
It's still early days, but the progress is happening fast.
This is all super exciting, but I have to admit, it's also a little bit intimidating.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about AI that can create art, write stories, and maybe even understand human emotions one day.
Yeah.
What does this mean for us humans?
That's a question a lot of people are asking.
Right. Like, are robots going to take over the world?
It's important to remember that even though these models are incredibly powerful, they're still just tools. They're created by humans, trained on human data, and ultimately designed to help us.
So it's up to us to make sure these tools are used for good.
Exactly.
Okay.
We need to be thoughtful about how we develop and deploy these models, ensuring that they're used responsibly and ethically.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
We have a responsibility to guide these powerful technologies in a positive direction.
Exactly.
But all this talk about MMLLMs sounds very futuristic. Is this something that's happening right now?
It's both.
Okay.
MMLLMs are already being used in some really cool ways.
Like what?
So, for example, in the healthcare field, there are models that can analyze medical images to help doctors detect diseases earlier and more accurately.
So AI is already helping to save lives.
Exactly.
That's amazing. What else are they being used for?
They're also being used in education to create personalized learning experiences that are tailored to each student's individual needs. And in the world of entertainment, MMLMs are helping to create more immersive and interactive video games and virtual reality experiences.
It sounds like MMLLMs are already having a real impact on our lives.
They definitely are.
Wow.
And as the technology continues to evolve, we can expect to see even more innovative applications emerge.
So we've covered a lot of ground here, from the basic building blocks of MMLLMs to their potential impact on society. But I'm still a little fuzzy on how these models actually learn.
Okay.
We talked about pre-training and instruction tuning.
Right.
But can you break that down even further? Like,
sure.
What's the secret sauce that makes these models so smart?
It's all about the data. You can think of it like feeding the MMLLM a giant buffet of information, images, text, videos, audio, all labeled and categorized.
Okay, so it's like a superpowered version of those image recognition games where you have to label what you see.
Exactly. During pre-training, The model is basically trying to find patterns and relationships in all of that data. It's learning to recognize objects, understand concepts, and even predict what might come next in a sequence.
So it's like learning the rules of the game by watching a ton of examples.
Right. And the more data you feed the model, the better it gets at understanding the world and making accurate predictions.
Okay, that makes sense. But how does instruction tuning work? How does the model learn to follow commands?
Think of it like this. After the MMLLM has learned the basic rules of the game from pre-training instruction tuning, it's like giving it a coach to help it refine its skills.
Okay, I like that analogy. So what does the coach do?
The coach gives the model specific instructions and feedback. For example, it might show the model a picture of a dog and say, describe this image. Then it will evaluate the model's response and give it a score based on how well it did.
So it's like getting graded on your homework.
Exactly. And just like with any student, the more practice the model gets, the better it becomes at following instructions and producing high-quality output.
This is all starting to make a lot more sense now. So we've got the pre-training where the model learns the basics, and then the instruction tuning where it learns to follow commands and refine its skills. It's really quite impressive how these models learn and adapt.
It is, and the research is constantly evolving with new techniques and approaches being developed all the time. It's a really exciting field to be following.
So all of this is great, but what about the future? What's next for MMLLMs? Are there any limitations we need to be aware of?
That's a great question. One thing to keep in mind is that while these models are incredibly powerful, they're not perfect. They can sometimes make mistakes, especially when they're dealing with new or unfamiliar information.
So they're still learning just like us.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other challenges that researchers are working on?
Absolutely. One big challenge is making sure that these models are fair and unbiased. Since they're trained on data that's created by humans, they can sometimes inherit our own biases and prejudices.
So it's like if you learned everything you know from watching biased news channels, you might end up with a skewed view of the world.
Exactly. Researchers are working on ways to detect and mitigate these biases, ensuring that MMLMs are used responsibly and ethically.
That's good to hear. So what does all this mean for the average person? How will LLMs impact our lives in the future?
It's hard to say for sure, but the possibilities are truly mind-boggling. Imagine a world where you have a personalized AI assistant that can help you with all sorts of tasks, from writing emails and creating presentations to planning trips and even composing music.
Oh, wow, that would be amazing. It sounds like MMLLMs could make our lives easier and more creative.
They definitely have the potential to do that, and who knows what other amazing applications we'll discover as the technology continues to advance.
Well, this deep dive has given me a lot to think about. This whole world of MMLLMs is fascinating, and I can't wait to see what the future holds for this technology. Thanks for breaking it all down for me.
You're welcome. It was my pleasure.
And to all our listeners out there, if you're as intrigued by this as I am, be sure to check out the show notes for more information on MMLLMs. We'll see you next time for another deep dive into the world of emerging technologies.